NFL draft is tonight, at least round one is, and this is such an important time of year for so many teams, and a lot of mistakes can be made. So, where will those mistakes be tonight? Let's break it all down, shall we? Just going to get the draft order here real quick. The biggest one is, I think, obvious. Let's start at number one. And this one, it has been bantied about for a little bit. Is the right move to make the Tennessee Titans sticking and picking at one and getting Cam Ward? I have been back and forth on this many times. If you guys follow my football content here, you will know that we did a quarterback thing early on in the process, and I was like, look, there are a lot of teams that need quarterbacks this year, and there are not a lot of answers coming, whether it be in free agency or in the draft. And so this is where gigantic mistakes are being made. And I will say, a lot of the buzz leading into this anyway, it does give you a little bit of confidence that maybe some of these teams have figured some shit out. But all of that to bring it back around to, is Cam Ward the right pick for the Tennessee Titans at number one? I think they are in a unique spot because I do like a little bit of how this team has kind of put things together to get that foundation, because we just did a segment there about where teams screw up so many times. It is, in football, drafting the franchise quarterback before you're ready to get that franchise quarterback. And for the Titans, I don't love where some of that money was spent in this offseason. And I do think it was one of the issues that we talked about with teams where, okay, we're getting this thing, so we just need to get an offensive lineman. That guy. Well, is he worth that much? Doesn't matter. We're getting a quarterback. We need to spend money in free agency on an offensive lineman, and he's an offensive lineman. Let's spend it on him. Okay, but is this a offensive lineman? And I do think that's kind of where Tennessee fell into a little bit. But they have also used their last 2 first-round picks on offensive linemen. They very recently went out and signed Tyler Lockett, who has had some injury woes, but I think when on the field is a very reliable wide receiver. And they have kind of built things up in their offense to a way that if you put a competent quarterback, shade intended for Will Levis, you put a competent quarterback in there and they're going to be okay. And then they brought in a bunch of veterans on the defensive side. Some worked, some didn't. But I mean, look, they're picking number one for a reason. The team was bad last year, but I do think that they are in a spot where you can put a good quarterback in there and actually see some results pretty early on in this process. And so Daniel Jeremiah has Cam Ward as the number 10 ranked player on the board. I would generally say if you are drafting number one overall and taking the 10th best player in a draft, you're doing it wrong. But I do think that Cam Ward is a talented enough quarterback that it does justify this particular position. And the number one draft pick is a unique one where if you are trading out of that, no one's trading up at number one to get Abdul Carter. No one's trading up at if the Giants are moving up to number one, they're getting Cam Ward, right? So it would be one thing to say, well, if you're not going to take the best player available, just trade out of that spot. Well, he may not be the best player available, but he is certainly the most coveted. And so that does limit your options when you are in that spot. So I do think that this is probably the right move for the Tennessee Titans. I think, could their defense benefit from getting Abdul Carter? Yes. 100 times yes. Would it be, I think, interesting to have a Travis Hunter on both sides of the football when you are still a team that has those needs? Yes, I do think that. And if Tennessee was drafting 2 or 3, those would be excellent picks for them. But because of the situation they are in, where that is the main piece that they are missing, and you have a kid who is good enough to warrant this pick, I do think that it makes sense for the Tennessee Titans to go with Cam Ward as the number one overall selection. After that, I think it gets really interesting because the Cleveland Browns, they went out and addressed a couple of things this offseason. They obviously have a gigantic albatross in both a a salary cap sheet and just a team way, with Deshaun Watson being an awful person and also making an awful lot of money hanging over this team's situation right now. And so because of that, I think you can justify a few things. This is a team that has a lot of needs and not a lot of money to spend on those needs. So you could say, like, look, Shadur Sanders, he is not the best player available for in the draft, but we kind of need a quarterback. And so if we are paying an exorbitant amount of money to Deshaun Watson and then a rookie contract to a first round pick, well, okay, that makes sense. We now have spent an average amount of money on quarterback. Hey, Toxic, hello. Thank you for popping in today. Really appreciate it. Hope the new job is treating you well. Appreciate you stopping by here today. So on the Browns, you could justify it given the team's situation of going out and getting the best quarterback available and just putting yourself in a spot where that is the that is an, like I said, it makes the cap situation a little bit easier to deal with. But you also have a bad salary cap situation, and you also have a lot of needs that you need to fill. And so there's a kid who is almost perfectly designed for Cleveland to get that. And you go out and draft Travis Hunter. I'm not saying he solves everything. And I do think that it is going to be very interesting to see how you handle a Travis Hunter, because it's one thing to go to Colorado and play cornerback and wide receiver and play 100 snaps a game. It's another to do that in the National Football League, where you're now not like there's no shade to any of the athletes that Travis Hunter was playing against, but you're not tackling a college player here. You're not tackling a future gym teacher. You're tackling DK Metcalf. And if you're drafted by Cleveland, you're now having to do it twice a year. You're having to come in and run support and try to stop Derrick Henry. You're trying to stop Lamar Jackson. That all is very wearing on the body. And so after doing that, I don't know if I want to go out there and see if I can break away from the best lockdown corners in the National Football League. So I do think that there is going to be a little bit of uniqueness in how Travis Hunter is handled. But I do also think for a team like the Browns, who are in a very bad salary cap situation, to go out and get a Travis Hunter to just kind of try to fill a couple holes at the same time actually makes a lot of sense. They're also in a good spot if they want to go with Abdul Carter and just have an elite pass rush for the next forever. And again, it's kind of the same thing as the quarterback spot. They're spending a ton of money on quarterback, so get a rookie contract in, and now you're spending an average amount on your quarterbacks. Same thing. They're paying Myles Garrett more than anyone has paid someone to do Myles Garrett's job in the history of this sport. So why not get another one on a rookie contract, and it kind of balances itself out a little bit, and now you have that elite level defense that this team was able to hang their hat on a couple of years ago. So I do think Cleveland is in an interesting spot right now, and I do think this is where the temptation of the quarterback thing really comes in, because I don't think Cleveland is a quarterback away from being a competitive team, but I do think they are a Travis Hunter away from fixing a couple of needs, and I do think they are an Abdul Carter away from at least having an identity and at least having a very, very good football team to be able to put out on the field, or at least one part of a very good football team to put out there on the field. Good. Glad that the job is going well, Toxic. That's awesome. Really, really glad to hear that. Looking at the Giants at 3, this is where things get very, very, very interesting, because you have a team that has an obvious quarterback need for the future. The Giants went out and made those signings with Russell Wilson and with Jameis Winston to try to solidify their quarterback position. And now I do think you do that so you aren't forced into a spot where you have to draft a kid, maybe ahead of where you should, as the number 3 overall pick. And so that is kind of me reading the tea leaves here a little bit, is that they just went out and made these moves so they didn't have to draft a quarterback. And again, this is a team that has a ton of holes. There is very few spots on this football team that you can look at and say, oh yeah, the Giants are set. They've made a couple of good moves this offseason, but this is still not a team that is going to be competitive with the Eagles or the Commanders in this division. And I don't think Shadur Sanders puts them in that spot either. So the interesting wrinkle with all of this is that Dayball and Sheehan are general managing and coaching for their jobs. And I do think a big part of it is like, look, you stuck us with Daniel Jones last year. Let's get our guy in here and we can show you what we can do. And then you see how the draft order kind of plays out. And whoops. Okay, so Shadur maybe isn't the guy that we thought he was going to be. But now, I mean, we kind of sold everything on, well, we can teach a young quarterback to do our system and we'll be good. So now, fuck. Because this is their season, right? If they don't fix it this year, then those guys are out. And Sheehan, I will give you that one. Dayball, I think he's an awesome coach. The fact that he got that much out of Daniel Jones as much as he did, I think he is a really, really smart offensive mind, and I think he'd be hired like that if he got fired by the New York Giants. But there is pressure on him to do well this season. So is it enough to just get your quarterbacks in a row, draft best player available, and then maybe take a shot at it next year? Although then you're probably drafting, 8, 9, 10, and spoiler, Arch Manning isn't going to be there at 8, 9, or 10, which is kind of the apple of everyone's eye. So this is the conundrum. And I have, again, long been a don't reach on quarterbacks in the first round guy, but I do understand that there is pressure on Sheehan and Daboll. They can't just be like, okay, punt. Let's see what 15, 17 games of Tommy DeVito actually looks like. Because their jobs are on the line. And so they have to go out and put together, quite frankly, a mediocre roster so there's some improvement so they can keep their jobs. Because I do think what would be the smartest way to go about it for New York is to just be piss poor this season. And it wastes another year of Malik Neighbors, and I understand that. But be real bad this year, get the number 1 overall pick and be able to control your destiny that way. Doesn't always work. See Panthers, Carolina. But you are able to at least control things that way. But they are in a unique position where Daboll and Sheehan can't do that. So they had to address the quarterback spot. Now, that does, I think, leave them in a position here where they just take best player available. If we are assuming Ward goes 1, then we are assuming one of Carter or Hunter goes 2, and you just take the other one. You have wide receiver set, I will grant you. If it is Travis Hunter, that is a really good kind of 1-2 there. And the defensive backs for the Giants, not spectacular, but you could use an upgrade in that area. Abdul Carter, I do think that a lot of the focus for the Giants is on the offensive side right now because of how putrid that it was. And so I do think a pass rusher is a bit of a tough sell to New York, but if you are getting an elite one and a guy who is a game changer, we have seen how that can turn franchises around very, very quickly. So I do think the smart move for the Giants is to just take Carter or Hunter and run and just go with that. But there is this little thing in the back of my mind that's like, man, like, it's one thing to sign Wilson and Winston, but if you think Shadur is going to fit in your system, neither of those guys are good enough that it's like, well, we can't possibly now. We signed Russell Wilson in 2025. So they're in a really interesting position. The Patriots at 4 are just kind of hoping someone reaches, right? They are either hoping that the Giants or Browns trade out of that spot to allow someone to come in at 2 and take Shadur Sanders 2 or 3, which the way all the tea leaves are going doesn't seem like that's the move right now because no one's really beating down the door for Shadur. Like I saw, we got the rhyme there, but I saw Daniel Jeremiah's most recent mock draft here. I don't have it in front of me now, but it had Shadur actually going behind Jackson Dart and going to the Steelers down at 21. That would be, I mean, wow. And so for the Patriots, it does kind of feel like this draft and the draft process broke in a way that is kind of anti to what they needed. Because if someone reaches at 2 or 3 for Shadur, if 2 quarterbacks go in the first 3 picks, then the Patriots have an opportunity to get to the best or second best player in this draft, in either Hunter or Carter, whoever is left. And that is just a monumental moment for the franchise to have Drake May as your guy and then to have cornerstone piece either as Abdul Carter or in Travis Hunter as well. The problem is it really doesn't seem like it's going to fall that way. So where now do the Patriots go at 4? I think is going to be fascinating. And so a lot of times you will see like, oh, well, the draft really starts at blah, 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 blah. The draft really starts here. I mean, I think honestly, the draft starts at 2. If Cleveland or the Giants just want to get freaky and go out and get a quarterback, then everything shifts and it becomes a real big kind of pivot point here. But if they stick with just, okay, let's just go best player available, it's Travis Hunter. Let's get Travis Hunter. Let's do that. And then if they go, the Giants go Abdul Carter, where are you going now? Will Campbell is the next one that's kind of available, and that's where Daniel Jeremiah has the Patriots going, is Will Campbell. The thing that is really funny about that whole conversation is, yes, the Patriots need offensive line help, and it is not a sexy pick. You're not putting Will Campbell on the ticket stubs for the season ticket holders for the upcoming season. But Drake May needs time. I think he's going to be a really good quarterback, but he does need some help on the offensive line. If you draft an offensive lineman at 4, you are presuming that you are getting that help. So it is a position of need. The issue, Will Campbell, according to his combine measurements, would have, I think, the third shortest arms of any left tackle in the NFL. And now sometimes outliers work, right? Sometimes it's like, I don't care how long his arms are. If he's still positionally good and if he can manage, he can manage. If the traits are what they are, we can figure it out and we can coach him into a thing. And that's fine. But they obviously thought it was a problem because all of a sudden at his, the Big 12 Pro Day? Well, it couldn't be Big 12 Pro Day. That'd be weird. He's at LSU. But at the LSU Pro Day, all of a sudden his arms extended a few more inches. And hey, look at, not a few more inches, but an extra inch. And then he went from in that outlier column to not in that outlier column, which it's hilarious that 1 inch can do that, and insert your joke there. But that kind of stuff is important when you are dealing with Myles Garrett coming off of the edge, and you are dealing with, like, for the Patriots, if they draft Will Campbell, he's dealing with Bosa. If you're dealing with that a couple of times a year, you don't want to be dealing with, well, his arms are short, but he can get there in a quick way, because you kind of got to be able to reach out and do that immediately, right? So it makes, like, all of it makes sense. Patriots need an offensive lineman, draft an offensive lineman. Except there is a very real world where that dude ends up being a guard in a few years. And looking at the not just Daniel Jeremiah, but the NFL draft kind of best player available or draft board, I guess. This guy is about 13th. 12 or 13th best player available. And so now again, you are reaching in a big way. Now, Daniel Jeremiah has him as the 9th best player available. So again, it's a need. It fits way more than some of the other guys who are available does. But there is that is such a boom or bust pick for the Patriots at a time where they really, like, you go from almost having a sure thing to now look, if this hits, it's the exact thing we need. But the odds of it being a hit are actually quite a bit smaller than not. So, that's concerning right now. So I think, are in a very interesting spot at number 4. I'm not going to go through and do an in-depth breakdown of all of these teams. I just think the top ones are very fascinating, because then you're at Jacksonville and you're kind of in the same situation where Jacksonville, like, they're pretty sure they got the quarterback. I still think they got the quarterback, but it's a big year for Trevor Lawrence. And I don't think they did him any favors in free agency. They continue to, we did again earlier, if you're not watching the live stream and just watching this as its own video on YouTube, we did earlier a breakdown of where teams go wrong with star players. And Jacksonville has checked like 3 of those boxes of just general incompetence, bringing the wrong people around him at the wrong time, mismanagement of the salary cap, and also just an assumption that, this guy's going to be awesome, so we can just draft whoever and put whoever a wide receiver because we got the quarterback and we'll be fine. They have a good pass rush, or at least good players on the pass rush. But aside from that, there isn't one spot where you can say, nah, man, they're good. So is this an area where you go Ashton Genty? Because a lot of people have him as the best player available in the 2025 NFL draft. Daniel Jeremiah has him as the 3rd best player in this draft. And so again, if you're drafting the 3rd best player in the draft at 5, boy, that seems to be a really smart thing to do. That being said, it's a deep running back draft. And the New York Giants drafted Saquon Barkley, 2nd, 3rd overall. And through no fault of Saquon Barkley's, who is awesome, as we established, the team didn't really get very far, because you don't need to be using these high of resources on those types of players. So there's, again, it seems like an obvious, okay, we'll just get best player available. Okay, well, here's the best player available. Well, it's at a position we can maybe get in the second round. And, I don't know if this one really makes sense for us right at this particular moment in time. So it just seems like, okay, best player available, great. But it's not a position that is a high leverage one that you really should be taking at number 5 overall. So you just have a lot of different questions with each of these picks where it seems obvious what they need, except for where their franchise is at, or except for how the draft board has kind of fallen to them. I think the other big stories in this draft are going to be, look, there are a lot of interesting teams right now. Like, you could run through every team and be like, oh, this is interesting. Oh, this is interesting. Oh, this is interesting. And just kind of do it that way. But I think the next one is obviously the Shadur Sanders conversation, because if he doesn't go to Cleveland at 2, if he doesn't go to the Giants at 3, he's certainly not going to the Patriots at 4. It would be the shocker of all shockers if he went to the Jags at 5, and then the fall starts. But you can also justify it for a few of these teams. Like the Raiders, they just went out and traded for Geno Smith. Didn't give up a lot for him, signed him to a contract, but it's not a gigantic contract by quarterback standards. Also, I don't think Shadur Sanders is a day one quarterback anyway in the NFL. I think you're going to need to redshirt him for a little bit. And so if you have a Geno Smith who is established, you have a coaching staff that is, I think, established in Vegas right now with Pete Carroll and Chip Kelly. Like, those guys are set in their whatever. There isn't going to be that pressure to bring that kid in and play him in the first or second games of the season. And so you can allow him to sit on your bench, learn from Geno Smith, learn from Pete Carroll, learn from Chip Kelly, and figure out the National Football League so that when he is your guy in maybe a year or two, that he can come in and be ready to go immediately. I think that's the best situation for a Shadur Sanders right now. I think that is the best spot, the best type of a spot for him to go into. The issue for the Raiders, again, because you can do this with almost every team, Vegas has a number of needs if they want to be better next year. They have a coach who's 80 and isn't necessarily going to be looking for, 5 years down the road, what are we going to be? And you have a team that needs a lot right now. And quarterback isn't one of them. They got quarterback set. Geno Smith is a good quarterback. They need help on the offensive line. Jacoby Myers is their number one wide receiver. Now, their number one pass catcher is Brock Bowers, who's awesome. But they need wide receiver help. They lost a couple very good players in free agency. Now, they've made some smart moves in free agency as well, but they have some needs in this draft. And so it feels like a bit of a waste to then use one of your first round picks to not address one of those needs and double down on, I'm not going to say a strength, because I don't know if Geno Smith is at that point in his career, but to draft a position that is just a check mark for you. But then again, quarterback and quarterback of the future is a difficult thing to find. So I think a lot of people are just assuming the Raiders are out on Shadur, but I do think with Tom Brady's relationship with this particular player, also that, like, I got Tom Brady in the building, not on Sundays because he's got another job, but I got Tom Brady in the building for a lot of these games. A pretty good mentor for Shadur Sanders to sit under for a year. So I do actually think the Raiders would be, while I homer pick for sure, I do actually think the Raiders would be in a good spot to draft Shadur Sanders here and then hope that the rest of the draft does kind of just fall your way a little bit and hope that you can maybe address some of those other things as this draft kind of goes along. Looking at where the Raiders are picking the rest of the way, I don't know why it is taking this long. There we go. They have picks in every round. They have the 37th overall pick, 68, 108, 143, 3 picks in the 6th, and then 1 pick in the 7th round. And so I am not saying, just figure out the rest of your team in the 2nd through 7th round, but I do think that there is an interesting opportunity for this team to get a quarterback that there is an upside on. Get a quarterback under Tom Brady's tutelage that has a lot of the limitations that Brady had. Probably not the upside of greatest of all time, but still an upside, while also dealing with again, the limitations that he had and how he can maximize it while not having to go in day one because you have an established veteran there and people aren't going to be calling for his job if the team goes 1-2 in the first few weeks. If he doesn't go to the Raiders, you can almost say a lot of that same stuff for the Jets. Where the Jets, I do think they have a good roster in place. Not as good as we thought it was a season ago. There are some holes on this team, but they do have a good roster. And they have the quarterback kind of set right now in Justin Fields. This wouldn't be a bad spot to, again, get your quarterback of the future and see how he can kind of develop along, but with an understanding that you are still picking 7th for a reason, and there are a few holes on this team that you still need to address. So that would be a good spot. And then the fall would really start, I think, for Shadur, because the Panthers don't need it. The Saints, it feels like a lot of people are just attaching them to Jackson Dart right now. And, I mean, they are a quarterback-needy team. I don't know if they are the team that should be going out and getting Shadur, because with Derek Carr's injury, they're going to need a guy to play day one. And I don't think Shadur is that guy. Now, I don't know if Jackson Dart is either. I think Jackson Dart is a little bit more in the Will Levis thing, and there are a lot of obvious reasons why you can make comparisons to those guys. But the way that I am comparing them, I guess, isn't the most flattering to either Nix or Dart, is that Dart is more of a finished product now. Shadur, there's a lot of developing that he still can do. There are a lot of characteristics that lead you to believe that he can be a very good quarterback. He was also just under siege all year, all career, really, at Colorado, because they never had an offensive line there. And while, yes, you had Travis Hunter to throw to, that was kind of it. So he didn't have a whole lot to work with at Colorado. Still got that Colorado team into some very good spots, again, with some help, but not as much help as you would assume. And so there's a lot of developing that he could do. Jackson Dart, when you look at him at the Senior Bowl and you watch his game tape throughout the year, it's a bit more of a finished product. So you're not getting that ceiling, but I can start him day one and I'm not necessarily too worried about it right now. He checks that college experience box that a lot of people are looking for. So if they go Dart over Shadur there, then Bears don't need a quarterback. 49ers, God, that would be funny. Oh yeah, we got Brock Purdy contract. Don't care. You're gone. Another rookie quarterback bringing it in. That would be a fun one. That would be a really, really interesting debate to have, because Brock Purdy has been great. And this would be Shanahan and Lynch doubling down on Shanahan being a quarterback guy. I'm not in the least bit suggesting that this is the way to go. But this team has a lot of holes, and they just got bled dry in free agency. It seems like a bad time to be giving out a gigantic contract for your quarterback. And look, Brock Purdy is a significantly better quarterback right now than Shadur Sanders is. And also, though, I think Shadur at this point was probably better than Brock Purdy was at this point. And I do think that Shadur isn't going to be a guy who just rests on, 11th overall pick. I'm good, baby. I think that given... Well, he is someone who obviously comes from wealth, right? And probably a lot of it with Deion Sanders. Say a lot about Deion. The guy loved to flaunt the primetime and all of that. There is also a work ethic that guy had to be able to play 2 positions in football and then baseball in the World Series and just being an annoyance to the Toronto Blue Jays. But that's another one for another time. So I think that this kid will work on the things that he needs to work on. It would be a move. Oh, that would be so much fun. If San Francisco is just like, we can't really afford to sign Brock Purdy right now because we have to fill almost every position on the football field. So, you know what? Who wants him? Who wants Brock Purdy? A lot of quarterback needy teams out there. Bring us your offers. We're going to draft Shadur. We're going to trade Brock Purdy. And we're going to get probably a few assets for him, have a bunch of future money we didn't think we were going to have, and now we can start to fill these holes that way. God, it's not going to happen, but that would be such a fun development if San Francisco was just like, fuck it, man, let's roll with it. Dallas, that would be, you could see them doing something like that, but I don't think they will. Miami, I mean, honestly, maybe should, but definitely wouldn't. Colts, kind of the same thing with Anthony Richardson. We're getting into more of the territory here, but the obvious is if he falls down to Denver, right? Like Atlanta's not doing it, Arizona's not doing it, Cincinnati is not doing it. Seattle, again, maybe should, but has more holes to fill. Tampa Bay's definitely not doing it. Denver's certainly not doing it. So then it gets down to the Steelers at 21. And now again, it puts them in a spot where it makes a ton of sense to draft Shadur Sanders there. The problem is you are now again throwing him in there day one. And you're not throwing him in there day one for the Saints, who, all due respect, don't have a lick of expectations. This is a team that, under Mike Tomlin, has always gone over their win total and has always made it over 500. And do they always make the playoffs? I mean, they make it quite a bit. Do they always win in the playoffs? Almost never, recently. But there is still an expectation that you are going to go in and you are going to be competitive. And now you have to go be competitive with Lamar Jackson and Joe Burrow. You get a couple games against Cleveland, which is nice. But, I mean, then you have to face Myles Garrett. So you are getting thrown into the wolves very quickly if that is the way the Steelers go. And so it makes a ton of sense. A lot of people are linking the two together. But I still think that Pittsburgh would need to go out and sign a quarterback. It just couldn't be Aaron Rodgers at that point. Like, that would be, and I don't know if he would go for it, but I mean, at this point, what else is he going to do? That would be a Kirk Cousins spot, right? To kind of bank this season on Kirk Cousins being a year removed now from that injury and seeing how a few guys have kind of developed out of that, to go in, just shore up that position for a year and hope that Shadur develops in the next year, or develops by the time Kirk Cousins' legs fall off. I think that is probably, it's the biggest storyline of this draft, and kind of seeing how it goes. Obviously the most fun is San Francisco. That is the most chaos. I think the draft changes significantly if it is the Giants that take him. Like, you look at all the different dominoes that would fall if the Giants take him. So let's say it's Cam Ward 1, the way a lot of people are expecting, and let's say Travis Hunter 2, like a lot of people are expecting. At 3, Shadur Sanders. Giants, again, you can squint, make it work, whatever. At 4, it is Abdul Carter, and it is insulting to every other draft prospect in that room how quickly the Patriots run that card up there. They don't, like, they just prick their finger and write it in blood because they don't have time to get a pen and click it on, or to type a name in. It is, we just have to get this in as quickly as possible. Abdul Carter, go. And then, how does the rest of the draft fall? Because now all of a sudden, Will Campbell, who we just laid out, there are some limitations with this particular player. But he is also, I believe, the highest rated offensive lineman on Daniel Jeremiah's board. Jacksonville, I would assume, wouldn't mind having that type of a player. Now all of a sudden, Genty, who a lot of people have going to Jacksonville, becomes available for the Raiders, who I think would run that pickup given who their coaching staff is. And so it sets this domino up now. All of a sudden, Kelvin Banks, who might have been reached on a little bit, it still might be a reach for the Jets, but now they have an opportunity. And so that is the domino that really crashes this back down. It makes the Patriots an automatic winner of the draft. It sets up a few teams in ways that are really beneficial to them, and it causes a little bit of chaos. But if Shadur keeps falling, there are a few teams who are going to have quite a few honest conversations about what they really have. So I am so excited for the draft here this year. Again, I think you can probably tell by just like how much I'm rambling on about all these different scenarios. I think the NFL draft is uniquely set up in this way because of, like, in basketball, the guys can come in and start right away. But I mean, there's only 12 positions to fill, and really like 5, and then only a few of them are going to make an impact in the immediacy, right? And then as you go down, it's like bench player and stuff like that. In baseball, it takes years, and now that's shortening, but it takes years for these kids to come in and make an impact on these teams. So that one gets a little bit boring. Hockey, it's kind of the same thing. The top 2 really do have an opportunity to make an impact, and we are seeing that again, that gap is kind of shortening as kids get better and better coming out of whether it be college or major junior hockey, or the U.S. development program, which has taken a real step. I mean, all of it, right? Like the Europe too. Like, I don't need to single any area out. But still, while it is fun and we like to talk about it, and there are certainly tiers, it's still, a few of these kids are going to make an impact here. In football, you have 22 starting positions that you get to fill, and there are a bunch of kids who are starter worthy immediately. Like, talking about around 100 of them that can be ready to start almost immediately. And then you have the high pressure of the NFL and every different way that goes. So I just think the NFL one is just the most interesting draft, and I am excited for it tonight.